Good evening and welcome to the Chaska City Council meeting for Monday, August 1st. We have been in a closed session for a city administrator's annual review. So we've already opened the meeting, so now we need to come out of recess. So I need a motion and a second to come out of recess. So if there's someone willing to make a motion and a second.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hubbard. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. Ooh, I didn't make that very good. All right, will you please stand and join me in Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I just have to touch on this as the 15-year anniversary of the 35W bridge collapse. At this time of the night, I was standing on, I don't know if it's the 3rd Street or 10th Street, I never did. I happened to be there and was part of that, so that was quite an interesting thing 15 years ago to this date and right in this time period. So it was, saw stuff that you've never seen before in your life, and hope you never have to visualize those things again. I learned and understood what the word surreal meant, because it just didn't seem like something like that could happen. We landed downtown right about 4 minutes after the bridge collapsed, and I happened to be with the Minneapolis fire chiefs. That's how I got involved, and so it was just but every August 1st, it just brings back a lot of different memories. We were going to the Twins game. We still have our Twins tickets, so. But
You didn't use them.
never used them. They're probably collectors pretty soon. So, but anyways, sorry, I just needed to add that. That's a special day. So with that, I would move for adopting of the agenda. Corrections or additions. I do have one. It's just visitor presentation that we're going to get our quarterly public safety update from the police chief tonight. So I've added that under visitor, which really isn't necessary probably to amend the agenda, but I'm just going to tell everybody. Is there any other corrections? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopting the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield.
Second.
Second by Councilmember McGraw. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. Moves to item 7. I have a proclamation for Fishing with Friends, and I know that we have a number of folks here. Mr. Lacey, who we generally deal with, is having some health issues with a knee, so come on up, guys, ladies. You guys can stand there and you can have your pretty face all over the camera, especially yours.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
All right. Oh, I gotta grab it. All right, I have a proclamation in recognition of the Chask Area Fishing with Friends Veterans Celebration. Whereas the Veterans Celebration is a salute to the veterans who have served our country and now live in Carver County, Hennepin County, and surrounding areas. You may go back there if you'd like to. Whereas the Veterans Celebration will take place on Monday, August 15th at Howard's Point Marina and will include a fishing trip on Lake Minnetonka and a barbecue picnic lunch. And whereas the event provides an opportunity for local veterans to enjoy the outdoors and fellowship of each other. Whereas the city of Chaska is grateful to Chaska Area Fishing with Friends for organizing the Veterans Celebration and for their ongoing efforts to provide enjoyable fishing opportunity and boat tours to veterans, senior citizens, youth, and adults with disabilities. Whereas the city of Chaska would also like to thank Howard's Point Marina, the Chaska Lions Club, Flags in Honor of Minnesota, the city of Shorewood for their sponsorship of the Veterans of Celebration. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Mark Woodshuttle, as the mayor of the Chaska, on behalf of the Chaska City Council, do hereby proclaim our support for Chaska Area Fishing with Friends Veterans Celebration. In witness whereof I have set the hand and the seal of the city of Chaska the first day of August, the year of our Lord 2022. So here you are, folks.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. You bet.
Thanks a
You
lot.
bet.
Thank you, Mark.
Oh. You only mess around. why don't you guys,
It'd be a
somebody
great
introduce yourself
event.
and just talk for a couple
Go ahead.
seconds.
Charlie Ryan, I've been with the group for, I think, 11 years, and it's been great to do this every year with the vets and the seniors and the kids. Enjoy the fishing academy that we do early June, so the kids can get out fishing with us. Enjoy it all.
I'm Linda Kerber. I'm new to this. These are the captains. I'm a first mate. So I help them get their life vests on and provide snacks and water. And it's been great. This is something my dad participated in at age 90 to 93 from Auburn Manor. And we take the excitement on the kids and the disabled adults is so exciting. They get so excited to get a bite and to get a fish, and sometimes they make little games out of it, like the first fish gets something, the biggest fish, or the most fish. So it's really exciting for them. They love being out on the water, and these guys do a great job.
My name's Lauren Seimer. I joined Fishing with Friends in 2013, and I've been the treasurer now for about 8 years. Getting a little tired of it, but kind of stuck with it.
There.
So I thank you
Thank
all.
you.
And tell you all that you're invited to join us on Monday, August 15th, if you want to drop by for lunch.
From 10 o'clock until 2, Howard's Point. Be a great event.
And the fishing is from roughly 10 until noon?
10 until noon.
That's
And
right.
then
we'll go to shore.
lunch, and I believe there's a little program, right?
There will be a little program.
Carl just,
Nothing much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not a lot of
very, very
speeches,
small.
though.
Nobody wants to hear that speeches, but.
Food and
Yeah, but I just know that there's something somewhere at noonish, that there'll
Right.
be a little something prior to eating.
Okay.
Do you want to introduce yourself,
you.
your part?
I'm Jerry Seimer, Warren's wife, and I go along on some of the trips. I'm not a first mate, but I enjoy
You
going.
might have to, if you keep talking, you might have to move over so the microphone picks you up. But,
All right.
all right, well,
Thank
thank you
you.
guys, I appreciate you coming, and I'll see you guys for sure on the 15th. I already got it, so, got her dialed in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie,
I
thanks,
was
Laura.
mentioning my youngest son did the fishing academy and had a chance to go out in the pontoon boat, and it was cool.
Yeah.
He caught a little pumpkin seed fish, which was pretty cool, and just had a great time. So it's a neat activity.
It's been a neat, when did that start, when did you buy that first boat, Charlie?
12.
Or Lauren? When did you buy that first boat?
2010,
10 was?
with the help of the city of Chaska,
Yeah,
actually.
no, I remember, that was right after I got on council, so that was awesome that we were able to help, and it was kind of, I was thinking it was kind of a different, but it's an amazing thing. I mean, I've seen the pictures of the faces of the people. One of these days, I'm gonna get on that boat and get out there. I qualify as old, I'm probably disabled, and probably everything, I probably fall in all of them, so.
Yeah,
But,
I was gonna say, as a testimonial, my son participated in the fishing academy last year, and it was so great. You know, sometimes children learn better from other adults teaching them rather than their
Yep.
parents sometimes. And so you guys have so many great volunteers that were really hands-on, and to go out on that boat and just to see the joy when he would catch a fish. And in fact, one of the photos I took that day was used as our Park and Rec's cover for the summer
Oh, I
here
saw
of
it,
him.
didn't I?
And it was at your fishing academy, so thank you for providing the opportunity.
Well, it's important that it's the Family Fishing Academy, because we learned early that it's easy to get the kids interested in fishing, but if they don't have an adult to go fishing with, they won't be able to carry on. So we always make sure that every kid that comes to the academy brings an adult.
Oh, yeah, and I bought the gloves, I can like do the hook and things like that now, so.
Well, thank you again.
All right, thanks, guys, appreciate it, and we'll see you in a couple of Mondays, I think.
You bet. Thanks.
See you, Charlie. All right, next on the agenda, we got almost my other favorite mayor's here. I know she's not on here, but we have WeCab is here with Executive Director Stephanie Alexandria and the former Victoria Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We
How you
really
doing,
are here
Mary?
tonight to introduce Stephanie, but first, Mayor, Council, thank you for letting us come and for telling us about, or for us to tell you about our program. I don't know if you know this, but really short, 8 years ago, we had a meeting in Chaska. We invited 70, only about 15 responded, and 40 showed up. So that was the beginning. Chaska also has the honor of being the first city to donate money to WeCab all those years ago when I sat down. It was very difficult with your city manager and the mayor, the current mayor. No, they were
We arm
very-
wrestled.
Yeah,
Those are
We
my-
lost.
yeah.
I got to go back in the inner sanctum too. It was really special. Anyway. Thank you so much for everything, and I'm going to introduce you now to Stephanie Alexander. She's going to take over, so anyway, thanks again for everything.
Awesome to
Thanks,
see you,
Mary.
Mary.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Alexander. I'm the current, I'm still going to call myself new Executive Director of WeCab. I started last October, and so I'm getting close to a year, but I'm still new, I'm going to say. First of all, I want to echo Mary. Thank you so much for your support of WeCab for all of these years. I ran some numbers today because I thought, you know, we like numbers, we like stories, but we like numbers too. In Carver County, we have 549 registered riders. Chaska, brace yourselves, has 251 of those riders.
Wow.
So you have a lot of riders that are registered with WeCab. We provide approximately 200 rides a month, and approximately 20 driver volunteers provide those 200 rides. Today, one of the biggest pleas that I could have for you, if you could spread the word, is we need more volunteers in a desperate way. I had the pleasure and honor of spending my entire weekend here in Chaska at Chaska River City Days. I was just across the street at a booth. And when I got here and Mary and I were chatting, I was telling her that I, worked all weekend here in Chaska and I had a wonderful time. And she said, the phones were nuts today. And they were all riders. They're all people needing rides within Chaska or within Carver County or even within West Tonka, because we know that Chaska River City Days is, people come from all over to come here for that weekend. And so we have a lot more interest as riders, which is super exciting, but we definitely need more drivers. I won't take up too much more of your time, but I will tell you that the reason that I am the executive director of WeCab is because I believe that transportation is the #1 thing that is not talked about in social services. I've been in social services for well over 20 years, and some people say that the most important thing is housing. Don't get me wrong, housing is very important. Some people say the most important thing is healthcare. Don't get me wrong, healthcare is also very important. And the final thing some people will die on that hill is that employment is the most important thing. Again, employment is so important, but if you don't have transportation, you can't get to your job, you can't get back and forth to your medical appointments, and you can't get to and from your housing. And so my plea to everyone right now is that we need more volunteers. I will open if anybody has any questions about WeCab or comments or anything.
Comments, questions? So, just while we're here and you have the floor, if I want to volunteer, what's the process? And what's the time commitment? How does that work? Just in a short line, just.
Yes, those are great questions. So you just call this number on the brochure, and it says right here, I think it's dial 3, but it says right here, let me look at it to make sure. Oh, look, I was right, dial 3. Call that number, dial number 3, say you want to be a volunteer, you fill out an application, we do a background check,
Yep,
because
I
obviously
understand.
we
Yep.
drive vulnerable adults around. The time commitment is whatever you're available for. We have no time commitment for our volunteer drivers. You pick up rides when you're able to, for the duration you're able to, for the time, date, location, everything. So it's really about your flexibility. That is one of our #1 goals for our volunteers.
Okay, so if I drive somebody to a medical appointment, do I stay there and wait for them? Or do you leave? I suppose it depends on.
It depends on, it depends on the length of the appointment,
Okay.
it depends on the driver. Most of our appointments, or most of our drives are considered one-way drives, and so, or one-way ride, and so sometimes one person will drop someone off and another person will pick them up. Oftentimes, the driver let's say there's a target right next to that medical appointment, that driver might drop them off, run a couple of errands, pick them up. Other people, we have take their phone, we're in a virtual world now, so
Yep.
people will actually work in their car or in a waiting room, so it kind of depends, is the answer to that.
Okay. No, I'm just throwing this out. I
Yeah.
think I know pretty much the answers. but I
Yeah,
just wanna-
no, those are good
Why you
questions.
got the floor, so, all right, anyone else? Otherwise, I'm just gonna get it, and hopefully Kevin will put it up, but I do wanna just get the number out here. To contact WeCab, it's 1-844-743-3932, and hopefully Kevin can put that on underneath as well, we have it.
We
so,
can put out a social media ad for that too.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a typical social media ad that you use
We
to
do.
try to attract volunteers?
Yep,
If
and
you
if-
could get it over to us, then we can just put that on a regular run.
We absolutely do. Who would I contact?
Me.
You,
So
okay.
I got your email, I'll just send you an
Yes,
email.
that'd be
So-
great. Yep, we have Facebook and Instagram, and we blast stuff out through that, and we have lots of posts we can share with you. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Matt, can you send it over to me? Because I wonder if, maybe some of the Southwest Transit drivers, when they're off hours, if they want to volunteer, too,
Sure.
might be willing to.
Right, well, awesome, thanks for coming to visit us. Mary, good to see you.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and then also under visitor presentation, we have our police chief, Ryan, here, is to do a quarterly public safety update. It looks like he's got somebody with him. I don't know if he's gonna help him or not. Don't be looking backward, that's you.
I tried. Sergeant Peschik's here for the action item later.
Oh, okay. I thought that's why you were here.
Are you our guard too?
It looks like it. I think we might have had a
Oh, man.
scheduling mishap, would be my guess. Well, good evening, Mayor, council members. I appreciate the time to speak to you this evening, which will be one of the first, let's call it a quarterly update regarding the police department, because the city administrator had mentioned maybe a couple weeks ago that there was a council interest in receiving regular updates from the police department. So considering this is going to be my first kind of go at this, what I've done is I took basically year-to-date as of July 17th, is the information that you're going to see.
That
In-
screen is off.
Please, at any point in time, if you have questions, I can clarify for you. If there's content that you
What
want to
does
see.
that screen say?
That in front of me? I'm not sure about that. If there's additional content that you'd like to see at future updates, please let me know. But what I wanted to cover first was just to kind of go over year-to-date, what we've looked at, number one, for calls for service. So we're just a little, as of, again, July 17th, a little over 7,200. If you look at 2021 in total, it was just a little over 11,000. So we're trending a little higher in terms of calls for service thus far this year.
Now we got it.
A breakdown of that you can see, and I won't regurgitate all these figures because they're right before you, but you'll see a breakdown in terms of things that are non-criminal. That's the bulk of what we deal with, and that's anything from, your animal complaints to general phone calls for police, what I would call a public assist. It can be just kind of a catch-all for many different things. Going down through traffic-related, that could be traffic stops, that could be traffic accidents. It's truly a compilation of different things that are traffic-related. Administrative, that's primarily going to be gun permits and other things that might happen administratively, like background checks within the office. Criminal-related, we're at 381. And then mental health-related, which I'll talk about one of the very last slides, is something new this year that we're tracking. So I do not have historical data on that. But again, as of July 17th, we're at that 189 mark. Traffic stops, year-to-date, almost 1,200, which has been an increase in what we saw in previous years. 164 arrests and 621 citations so far year-to-date. When you compare that to last year, we had 382 arrests and 793 citations. Next slide, please, Kevin. So moving beyond kind of the stats and that sort of data, I thought it would be important to also give an update on investigations in general. So taking a look at year-to-date in 2022, abuse and neglect cases. This could be anything involving children, this could be adult abuse, depending upon the circumstances. We've had 159 cases that have been referred to our agency. We've had 13 burglaries. That could be residential, it could be commercial. It's just a general figure. Criminal sexual conduct or rape cases, 7 as of July 17th. 19 death investigations, which could be anything from those with maybe some suspicious circumstances, could be drug-related, could be natural causes, just a overall general number. 47 catalytic converter thefts, which the reason why I put it on there outside of regular thefts is it's gained attention both locally as well as regionally, statewide. 47 again, but it is worth noting that we've seen a significant drop since there was a marking program that our agency is participating in, and that came away of the state where we're marking catalytic converters, hopefully to act as a deterrent to theft. And then also there was 1 significant or 2 significant arrests of suspects that are more than likely operating kind of as a ring of catalytic converter thefts. So I think when you combine those 2 elements together, we've seen that noticeable decrease.
So at a high point, Chief, what was catalytic converters? Was it 100? You know, I just, when you say significant drop, I'm just curious I didn't realize we had it that high here. You know, you hear about it, but you just, I haven't heard a lot of it around here, so.
I think that 47 figure probably marks our most significant number.
Okay.
Because it was trending up probably late last year, early part of this year, which is probably the most significant that we've seen.
Thanks.
A few things in terms of trends that I think are important for you on the council to be aware of. You know, I did mention an overdose death. Just noting how complicated those investigations can be in terms of dealing with forensic evidence, which often lives on cell phones, being able to get warrants and extract that information from a device, and then in terms reviewing all of that data, tracking down witnesses, trying to determine the exact cause of death. All of these factors make for a very prolonged and complicated investigation. Predatory offender monitoring, we have seen a slight increase in registrants that are homeless, which is fully allowed by state statute for one to claim that they are homeless within a particular city, and we've seen a slight increase in that. I think in terms of the burden on staff, that does create a weekly check-in process for the registrant where they have to come in to the police department lobby and again declare a homeless status. So there has been an increase in that bandwidth for our investigations. And then also I touched on a little bit of this, but with property crime trends, we have seen a number again of these active rings. I mentioned it in the context of catalytic converter thefts, but also at the early part of this year, residential burglaries. There were a number of different criminal networks or rings that were responsible for burglaries in our community, Chanhassen, and then also in the surrounding area. And with those cases, there was some outstanding detective work that was done on behalf of some of our detectives, and then also from the sheriff's office and other agencies where they worked collaboratively, put their cases together, and ended up working the leads that they had, developed suspects. Search warrant was conducted, I believe, in Minneapolis at one point. Property from burglaries in many different cities were recovered. I think some firearms that had been converted to full auto capacity were also located. So without that good detective work and that collaboration, those cases probably would not have been put together the way that they were.
And we're just, I think the kind of stress it too is that those active rings have been all across the metro. I mean, you know, for some people to think that it's only here, and I know you said it's a, you know, collaboration to be able to catch those guys, but they were quick and fast and they knew what they wanted, so.
Correct.
But I haven't heard that for a while, so that's a good thing.
No.
So maybe they do have the guys, so, people.
Yeah, we've been fortunate that that trend that we were seeing in this particular part of the metro has declined. But no, you're right, Mayor. We statistically, when you look at our crime stats in terms of burglaries, you know, other types of Part 1 crimes, they are still in an area that Chaska is a very safe community.
Does that imply there was like a successful prosecution for that case, for example, or the burglary?
I think prosecution, I mean, they've been formally charged, but in terms of a conviction, I think that's still pending in the court system. But as part of our investigation, that process, I mean, obviously we work closely with the county attorney and the prosecutor to make sure we put together a good case.
One of the statistics that they use is a crime clearance rate, and what that measures is it doesn't measure conviction, it measures charging somebody. So taking action to get it to a point where it's actually charged by the county, the individual. I know for years our crime clearance rate in Chaska has been significantly higher than the sort of metro average. The metro average has been right around upper 50s, and I think we've been in the upper 70s for our crime clearance rate.
Next slide, please, Kevin. Continuing 2021 recap, what we were looking at investigations, we had 1,701 cases were reviewed by supervisors. 662 of those cases were assigned to investigators, so that could be anything from a theft investigation to a burglary or assault, anything that requires that criminal follow-up. 49 of those cases were submitted to the county attorney. To the city administrator's point, in 96% of those cases were formally charged, which I don't have the current, kind of going rate as a metro average, but I think Matt is probably correct in that 50 to 60% range. So while we didn't see a lot of cases submitted for formal charging, that is an impressive figure and is a testament to the good work that our patrol and investigative staff do to put forth a good and thorough chargeable case. We did log 901 pieces of evidence into the property room, and that's just about probably reflects any type of property that we can bring in. We did 45 predatory offender registrations, and we had 1 level 3 notification of a predatory offender. Next slide, please. So I won't read everything on this list, but I'll pull a few things out because I think they're either new programs or maybe we've had some updates. We've had a lot of success with the Coffee with a Cop program, which I participate in. I think it's probably one of the most successful engagement efforts that we do. We may draw a smaller crowd as compared to some of our other engagement programming, but I think we have some of the most authentic conversations over a cup of coffee. So that has been a great program, and obviously any of you, if you ever want some coffee, I'd encourage you to come out and join us. It's a good program. Safety Camp was another success this year. We had a lot of good kids there with a lot of energy. It's always well received and well attended by our staff as well. Picnic with Police was last week, which was the second year putting this together. I think the crowds exceeded the first year. It was a good turnout and everybody had a good time, and that's another successful event. Growth through opportunity. So if you remember the 2 young cadets that came in and got sworn in, I think this has been a fantastic program across the board. And if you recall, we were the 3rd community in the state to participate in this program, but I really think the uniqueness of what was put together reflects the strength of our city when we had participation across the board with different city departments. And you can see these cadets through social media or times I've stopped out to interact with them. They really got a good experience here. So I'm very much looking forward to this in the future. Hopefully we get as enthusiastic of participants as Mitchell and Jordan. And I know they're going to be back here later this month to see you guys before they end the program. So that's been a really good addition.
Every one of our departments has had a fantastic time working with that, and for our department, they got to do a mock, each of them got to do a mock council meeting. And so
I saw it. He told me I ran into him at the fire station. He told me he was the mayor.
Oh, yeah. He was,
Jordan.
yeah.
Jordan said, I'm the mayor.
So we gave them each a photograph of them in a little, frame, and Mitchell just had tears in his eyes. I mean, he was just ecstatic about it and stuff. So I mean, it was pretty cool, and I know they've done some really interesting activities with each of the departments that they've gone to. So
They've got to do some cool things. I follow that.
yeah.
I think one that you're not touching on, I think is really, really important. I think the Bus Stop Tuesdays and the Freeze Pop Fridays are a big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
just getting that interaction, and I'm just basing it on the photos that I see, but the smiles on the kids' faces, and that tells me a lot. So I think that's a pretty cool one, and making that connection and getting back to the days where, kids aren't afraid of police officers, and know that they can go to any police officer if they got something, I think is huge.
No, and I agree, and it wasn't, well, kind of intentional why I glazed over it, so you don't give me the hook, Mayor, because I can tend to probably talk too much, but I completely agree, and I chalk it up very similarly to coffee with a cop, and I think it's more of a spontaneous interaction. And again, definitely a very successful, well-received program on both sides. Next slide, Kevin, please. A few other engagement programs, things that are new, the virtual ride-alongs, which is not necessarily like, live PD or whatever you want to call it, but it's just kind of tidbits and a snapshot of what the officers are doing on the street. That's a new program on Twitter. I'm not quite sure what the follower rate looks like with that, but I know it's been well received by at least some in the community. The Smile program is new in terms of engagement, and what this does is allows residents to voluntarily participate if they have a surveillance camera or Ring doorbell camera, something on their property, and it just lets us know that they have that at their home. And it's an electronic database that we keep, so if there is an incident in their neighborhood, instead of us having to go door-to-door canvassing, it's a better use of staff time to be able to do a simple search and see if there's any available video in that neighborhood. The crime mapping application is another new tool that we implemented a few months back. If you've had a chance to take a look at that, I think it offers a fairly comprehensive, albeit public, information database to take a look at different types of police activity, criminal activity in neighborhoods, just in the interest of data sharing with the community. Speed trailer is obviously new to the community, and I didn't necessarily pull specific data, but I did want to let you know that we've had 48 deployments again as of July 17th, and the first date that we put that out was back on April 21st. So my plan is, moving forward, as long as it works, it has power, is going to be have that out consistently. We'll probably put it back in the fall before the snow falls, and then we'll get that out in the spring when we think we're done with snow. I just don't want to be in the situation where it gets hit by a snowplow or I get yelled at by our public works director, but I do intend, as often as we can get that deployed, we certainly will. And as we respond to complaints perhaps in your neighborhoods, your wards, please let me know so we can put in a request and have that deployed. And we do have a mechanism to go in and pull speed data. If you have a person in a neighborhood that has a particular interest, has questions, I can pull that data. Fastest vehicles, average speed. So please let me know what you might need.
Can residents request that?
They could.
So they could call in and say there's a lot of speeding in front of my house?
There's a form on
We
the
have a form.
website, right?
Oh, okay.
The other thing on here I want to mention is we are undergoing, and Sergeant Peschik is a part of this as well, site assessments to take a look at where we are now as a baseline of how we would respond to a particular type of critical incident, and then also identifying information or data that we need to establish in the way of having more thorough response plans. So this is an ambitious plan. It's probably going to be a 6-month process, but I think at the end, we'll have a much better response capacity. We'll have prepared documents, plans, maps, and we'll be working with the school district and other locations throughout the city as part of this process. Next slide, Kevin, please. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about as part of this quarterly update, if you will, if you recall back at the very onset of this year, we initiated what I call an enhanced services pilot program. And so we're now 7 months, almost 8 months now into this pilot program. And when you think about enhanced services, what I call the enhanced services coordinator, you might ask yourself, well, what is that? Basically, what I want you to think of is in situations where somebody might be struggling with some type of a crisis situation related to mental health, could be folks with intellectual disabilities. It's a pilot program that's designed to do 2 things. Number one, to be proactive and also be reactive. So on the proactive side, it's taking an adaptation of what we've done so well as an agency for years, and that's the community partnership element, but transferring that again to the area of people with mental health challenges, intellectual disabilities, and tailoring that program to those individuals. So coming up, I believe later this month, an event will be held called Shoulder to Shoulder, And this is going to be the first of its kind, at least for our department, where it's taking essentially the purpose of the Vitals app, which is to provide first responders with specific data and needs for people with mental health challenges, intellectual disabilities, so officers know how best to deal with them, but doing it in an in-person format. And it's trying to help bridge that gap, establish better rapport, so our staff can get to know these folks in our community. So if we do have to respond to a mental health situation or someone in crisis, if we have that information, how best to deal with these individuals. Are there family members we can contact? Again, just trying to do that in an in-person format. But then also, more commonly with this pilot program is being reactive. And what I mean by that, and I mentioned at the very start of this presentation, we're starting to track occurrences of mental health calls. And the reason for that is ensuring that we are doing follow-up with these individuals in the community. And follow-up can take many different forms, because very often a patrol officer might go to someone's house for a particular crisis situation. They may or may not go to the hospital, but let's say they do go to the hospital, the officers help facilitate that transport. Law enforcement is out of the mix. And very oftentimes we continue to deal with these same individuals time after time, and there doesn't seem to be any necessary progress that occurs. So the intent of the follow-up visits is to try to affect more mid and long-term solutions to whatever problem that these individuals might be facing. So as part of the pilot, we've met with partnering entities, stakeholders in the community. That's been the county attorney's office, public health, Ridgeview. We've developed a new hold form that extracts or asks for more detailed information. And again, just trying to find more midterm solutions. And when you take a look at some of the statistics up here with the pilot, a lot of this is just geared towards that rapport building as part of the follow-up. And it's asking some of the basic questions. I mean, what kind of needs does this particular individual have? It's working with their family, coming up with some kind of a plan for folks. And the successes that we've had to date, there's some pretty significant ones. There's a veteran with post-traumatic stress disorder that Sergeant Duzan, who's the officer working the pilot, has worked with. That individual has come to terms with some of the challenges that he's had, is getting the treatment that he needs. And there's a couple of other individuals with a very similar set of circumstances. I also believe one individual has moved out of a treatment center, has mended fences with their family, and they've started to receive an education, and they're back to work on the job. And a lot of these folks have this rapport now with Sergeant Duzan to call him, ask for advice, guidance, and again, it's just helping bridge that gap to the many different services that we have in the community. So I had mentioned, I think it was 189 mental health calls to date, and of that, in this pilot, Sergeant Duzan has spent 22 hours in total just working up in follow-up with these individuals, trying to come up with some kind of a plan or solution. And the way I look at it is it's twofold benefit, or probably more complex than that. But number one, we want everyone in the community to feel part of our partnership programs, part of that engagement. Our engagement, again, it's thorough, it's successful, but I think that's another integral piece to it. But also more on the calls for service aspect, on our service capacity. If we can affect, again, midterm, long-term solutions that hopefully breaks the cycle of the repeat calls, it lowers the possibility of the use of force by our officers if there's a transport hold situation, whatever that particular set of circumstances might be, and just truly trying to think outside the box with the pilot program. Currently, we do have a grant application out through the Department of Justice to try to fund this position as part of the grant. But moving forward into the future, we'll see what happens with that, but we have had relative success already with the pilot program, and we're looking forward to the shoulder-to-shoulder event. Yes, sir?
So when you talk about like solutions, what are like some of the options or things that, that the officer can bring to the table when like re-engaging with, people who are, kind of part of this, pilot or part of this program?
So it's very individualized with each individual. So I think number one, the most important element from the onset is just rapport building. Because I think initially there's probably a brick wall oftentimes between the officer and the individual, and it's just building that fundamental trust. In the direction where it goes from there, I mean, sometimes it's It's trying to see what kind of services are available, or what does this individual need. It could be things as simple as clothing, shelter, food, what are their particular needs, and that also can transcend into the mental health area. Sergeant Duzan, I know, has personally transported several individuals to the hospital on a voluntary basis to receive mental health care, medical care. Bridging the gap again with families seems to be very common, where people have a reluctancy, whether through embarrassment, strained relationships, not to reach out to family. So acting as that third party, if you will, to hopefully get this person to re-engage, but also working with other entities. Could be county attorney, could be public health, could be Ridgeview, because what I've found in some of the more complex situations is one particular agency can't address the issue, but when you put your heads together, it seems that things become possible in collaboration.
Can even be as simple as, if you have the rapport building, understanding what might be the issue that an officer might expect if they respond to a call. So what might be a trigger for somebody, or what, you don't know those things unless you build relationships with them. If you have an autistic person that might be triggered by something, to know that beforehand before you go into that event can be a significant piece of information.
Do we have any access to like the old Steiner house that's between here and Victoria? Is that full, or I don't know if you know that yourself, but I don't know if he has that ability to take.
If you don't, it's a mental health center.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't know, what is the new name of it?
They still call it the Mary K. Steiner, but it's the Carver County Mental Health Center.
Into your question, Mayor, that would be part of our partnership with the county. If there was somebody that maybe was in an inappropriate housing situation, again, that would be part of that roundtable process, that if somebody needed to be relocated, that would be.
I just wasn't sure if it's full, and it's hard, because that's what they were telling us, that they're usually pretty full. But I didn't know if there was, you have that ability to, if you had somebody, you could take them there.
I think it would probably be more of a phone call to the county, and then they would figure out placement.
So is that like the goal? Is the goal for us as the police department to follow up with all the individuals, or is the goal to have the partnerships so that, like, let's say, someone from the county follows up instead, or someone from Ridgeview, or, just depending on the mental health kind of crisis that, at hand?
A little bit of both,
Okay.
to be honest. The overall goal under this coordinator, enhanced services coordinator, is just to make sure things don't fall between the cracks or
Sure.
get lost. So in some situations, it may be a more complex response where we would want a crisis worker, we would want somebody from Ridgeview. But in other situations, it might just be a follow-up phone call for things of a lesser severity. And again, it's a rapport building, it's the engagement. But again, each particular response is so individualized.
Sure.
Based on, the preliminary call data or report perhaps that the officer put together. Look at it much like what happened, 25, 30 years ago in response to domestic violence. And it was very common where they talked about breaking the cycle of domestic violence. The same thing could be said here, where it's not just law enforcement coming in, having a very brief contact with an individual, solving that problem in the then and there, but trying to employ, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the midterm, long-term solutions. Mm-hmm. Much like what an investigator does, where an officer might go out, they take the initial report, they forward that on, a supervisor reviews it, and it gets assigned to an investigator for follow-up. Very much the same process, just in a non-criminal sense.
Sure.
There's no other questions. I think that's.
I didn't know if you had others. I have a question. So I will say is Southwest Metro in particular, I've seen, I don't know the right terminology, but I'll put individuals on corners with signs. I don't know what the technical terminology is for people looking for panhandling.
Yeah.
I feel like Southwest Metro particularly has seen an increase over the last year. I think the environment and the economy speaks to that. So when an individual sees that or has concerns, what is the recommendation? What's the legality of it? Should they call the police? How does that process work? Because I sometimes see that a lot on the social media feeds and everything like that. And I do think, especially Southwest Metro and Chaska included in that, I've seen an increase. I guess, have you seen an increase? Is that just me making that up? But I feel like I see that more often than I have in the past.
And you're correct, it's become more of a common occurrence. To your first question, I mean, I would never deter someone from calling law enforcement if you think there's something that we need to address. Our department does a very good job of following up with reporting parties or people that may call the police. There may be circumstances where there's no action would be warranted on our part. There are some panhandlers that are repeat in the community that we're well aware of, that we've checked on in the past. I know sometimes there's been concerns that children are present at the same time, so it is essentially a welfare check. But to the best of my knowledge, all of the circumstances that we've come across, I mean, any perceived child protection issue has been unfounded based on our observations or investigation that was initiated. To your other question, no, panhandling is not illegal in the state. It's not a criminal issue. Where it would potentially cross the line is if it is accompanied by any type of threat, any type of physical force. If somebody is overtly pushy, if you will, it could be a disorderly conduct situation. But the simple act of panhandling is not a criminal offense. But that said, I know there's been littering concerns in the past as well, and some other quality of life issues that we've addressed actually through enhanced services has been our approach, because by the time we're there, the people are gone, so we're dealing with a trash issue at that point.
Thank you. Yeah, I've seen.
Don't they have to stay, they can't be on the roadway, right?
They
They have to be in the center
right away.
islands
Yeah.
or some sort of an island that they can't really be out on the road. So that, I think, would be a real reason if they're out walking on the road or go eat. They can't even really go out and collect the money. They have to stay on the curb.
The other thing I've noticed a lot more is them being in private property areas, so say up in Chaska Commons. A private property owner does have the ability to say,
Right.
no, you can't do that here. But it has to be the action of the actual property owner to actually say, no, you can't be here and do that.
And obviously, if they refuse, then a call might be made,
And
right?
it could be a trespass type of situation.
Those are both very good points. You're right, Mayor. That would be technically, if somebody was in the roadway, that would be an impeding traffic situation, which is again state statute. And then to the city administrator's point, on private property, we could facilitate a trespass, which would be arrestable if they refused to vacate.
So I remember a while back, we decided that we wanted to re-up into the Southwest Metro Drug Task Force. And then that was probably about a year and a half ago, something like that. I was wondering just if we, noticed what are anything that we've seen, come out from that.
So yeah, you're correct. It was back at the start of 2021, we re-entered a partnership, which is a monetary one, which gives us, we're a voting member of the Drug Task Force, so we get representation if there's an issue in the community. I know on the kind of proactive side, they've been involved in a number of different presentations at our community events talking about narcotics and awareness. So that has come to fruition. They also have worked a number of active cases in the community. A few of them come to mind this year. I know there were some last year as well that they became involved in. I know there was a significant arrest that occurred in the city this year, several months ago. But also, when I talked about death investigations, that's around drug overdoses. We do have that ability to call them, consult them, have them assist with those types of cases as well.
Okay, so because I remember one of the goals of doing that was to try to remedy some of the challenges we're seeing with some of the the drug trafficking and things like that. Because as I recall, that there was because we weren't part of that, then people would kind of use our community as a place to hide out or to knowing that we weren't part of that consortium. Have we seen an impact in terms of help dealing with that issue because of it?
I don't know if we've seen necessarily a direct impact. I believe we've seen an increase in cases that have occurred within Carver County. But in terms of specifics, I don't know if I would have any particular data. I think our overdose deaths year to year have been fairly consistent. But again, I think what I really want to focus on with that partnership is just noting the complexity of the cases, especially resulting in overdose deaths, and some of the expertise, the extra, manpower, if you will, that comes to the table, I think is of great benefit to the city, just especially recognizing how complex those cases, and then oftentimes on their follow-up investigations, that takes them outside of our city. It will take them oftentimes outside of the county, and they obviously have the investigative staff to pursue those leads.
Okay, and the only other question I had was one that I don't think I recall seeing on the slide deck here, is, you know, around the metro, we hear all about carjackings a lot. You know, I'm guessing from the stats, we haven't really had an issue with that yet, knock on wood, but, you know, it's like, as we know that a lot of the criminals come to different communities such as ours because they think it's safe, so, you know, it makes it kind of easy prey. You know, any thoughts around that from your perspective, and you know, how do we kind of proactively prevent that sort of thing? And, you know, should it happen, you know, what should a individual do, you know, if they're caught in that sort of event?
Fortunately, we haven't seen that same type of trend, which carjacking I would equate the same thing as an aggravated robbery. We haven't seen occurrences of that in Chaska, which we're fortunate not to. We have seen probably a slight increase in recovered stolen vehicles in the city, which may or may not have been stolen in the commission of a carjacking, more than likely not. But if somebody were to find themselves in that situation, or just as a general rule of thumb, is to be aware of your surroundings. I think situational awareness is always vital. But if you find yourself in that situation, it's just to cooperate with the demands of the suspect. If they want the vehicle, give them the vehicle. If they want your wallet, I would cooperate in that process and be a good witness. So when you report that to law enforcement, try to remember as much as you can about the suspect, so we can do as much as possible as part of the investigation. But general rule of thumb is situational awareness, but I think it's very important for people in our community to know that we are a very safe community. We haven't seen this type of crime, certainly with carjackings, other types of violent crime. You're safe in our community.
Great, thank you.
I did have one gentleman that had asked about the catalytic converter thefts, and he said that someone he knew had, you know, one of his neighbors, it was a while back or whatever, but will there be a future marking event again? Because I know it was pretty limited to the certain makes and models that were kind of more vulnerable, if my memory is correct, when you guys hosted that, but will there be future ones?
I would imagine so, subject to the availability of the marking devices which come down through the state. So I believe they targeted first, if you will, at the state level, probably the most prevalent vehicles that have been subject to the catalytic converter thefts, and I'm assuming that subsequent marking events will, you know, continue working through the most common makes and models. So Chaska PD would participate in the event that supply becomes available again.
Sure.
But you can get the cat card anytime right now. So like at River City Days, my whole family signed up for cat card. I think that's good too. But you're talking about like where they actually,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
All right, anything else for the chief?
I had one more thing, sorry. So I saw coming up was, and I didn't hear you mention, maybe you did, the Sensory Friendly Safety Day. I thought that was nice too. So that's for specifically, I don't know, do you want to talk more about that event? I don't want to speak, it's specifically for,
Yep, that is specific. So sensory friendly, which we obviously at Fire and Ice, there was also a sensory friendly booth that was put in place. So this one is being done a little outside of the enhanced services position. I think this is in cooperation or partnership with the fire department. So the purpose behind this is those of us in the community that may have sensitivity to lights, to sirens, they may be reluctant to participate in your more traditional touch a truck event, or, you know, some of the other types of events where the fire trucks and the police cars are very loud. So the intent here is to offer that same type of programming to those in the community that just don't want the loud noises, bright lights, things of that nature. So you're absolutely right, it's an extension of that programming.
We should make touch a truck sensory friendly. And I bet you a lot more of the public works guys would want to work it. All the honking and stuff of the horns, and it gets pretty loud.
All right, anyone else for the chief? All right, thanks. I think that that's a good update for us, and just to see what's happening, you know, how things are working now that you've been here for a little bit, and it's awesome to see, so thanks, and appreciate the update.
Thank you very much.
Forward to the next one. All right, I don't have anybody else here. Kevin, there's nobody else on visitor presentation out there? No. Okay, all right, thanks. All right, with that, we will move on, approving previous meeting minutes. Again, if there are no corrections or additions, I would entertain a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes. And I believe that is from the July 18th. Oh, yeah, there it is, July 18th, sorry. It's there.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember McGraw,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hubbard, approving the July 18th meeting minutes. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, post same sign. Motion carried, moves us to item 10, consent. Again, these are all items that need our approval, but any and all can be pulled off and discussed if there are. So if anyone's got any comments, questions, otherwise I'd entertain a motion to approve consent.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second?
second by Councilmember Long. Discussion.
I just want to comment that I was excited to read about the Miracle Field. I just think that's a cool project that's been out there for a while, and I think it's, I was actually able to witness, I had never seen one before, but I was at Kings Field in Lakeville has one with among their 15-ish baseball fields that are there, and so it's just kind of a cool thing to see, and my kids were like, what's that? And I explained that, and it's just kind of the education purpose, so I think it's cool to see it moving forward.
I also want to comment that I ran into our previous city attorney at River City Days, and he was telling me that the cart paths were no good at the town course, and I was able to at least tell him that we were amending the budget for
To
those.
address that, yeah.
Yes, so it was really perfect timing.
Yeah, good.
What's the matter with the cart paths?
They're a little bumpy.
There's no mess up out there, so.
Tell them to slow down.
Yeah, you won't go airborne if you
Yeah.
drive.
So I'm sorry.
Slow down.
Could not golf
Put a
as
governor
much.
on this cart. So Matt, I mean, there's quite a ways to go on funding. Is that something that, is that like 2 years away? I mean, I know we got a ways to
No,
go
the
too.
goal is to get the funding done over the next year. So,
You can raise that much, huh?
I think so.
Oh, wow.
You know, we've already, so we have, and I'm speaking within Rotary now, sort of putting on two different
Right,
hats here.
yeah, I know that.
Within Rotary, we have two separate subcommittees. One is a fundraising subcommittee and one is a, more of a design subcommittee. And so both are sort of working side by side. The fundraising one, there's been a number of groups that have shown interest in wanting to support
Partner.
this. And so in a lot of respects, I sort of view it very similar to discussions that were had with the Loop. You know, we've already raised $330,000, and so it's not, I think that's the other thing that's really gonna help us with the fundraising, is it's not like we're starting from scratch. It's like, help us finish this.
'Cause don't we gotta hit close to $1 million, didn't I see?
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to hit $1 million because it gives us more flexibility to do more with the adaptive playground side of it.
Oh, so
Talking,
that's including the adaptive
that's
playground?
including the playground and everything.
Oh, okay, I thought that was a different.
No, that's including everything.
Okay.
You know, talking with landscape structures, they think especially since one of our major donors that's not included in the 330,000 is Kraus Anderson. They've agreed to do all the work, like
the work
site
in
work
kind,
for it
yeah.
and stuff. So I mean, that's a big cost right there. You know, with that included, I mean, I think we probably are closer to like the $500,000 mark of what we need to raise over the next year. So I don't know, I think it's very doable.
Oh, cool. I just saw the numbers and I went, wow, that's a lot, but I don't.
Sometimes it's easier to raise money for big projects than it is for
Yeah,
small
no, I
projects.
agree. And that's, like Councilmember Gross, it's such a unique project that to have that in our community is just another thing about, welcoming everyone here, and I think it's important, and I think people really see that, and I think that if they know that really that funds are being raised for that, I think that probably will be quicker than we think.
I think the other thing to recognize is that, especially if we include the adaptive playground component of it, those become reasons that people move to the community. You know, because if you have a child that, you know, has special needs, you know, right now, you're driving over to Minnetonka to go to Miracle League, to go to the, you know, closest adaptive park. You know, I know Waconia is working on one, but you're driving over to Richfield right now. So, I mean, it's, you know, people will choose the community to live in, especially in the metro area, based on having these amenities. So it becomes a real attraction tool to get people to move to the community too.
So that reminds me, because one of the things we have to do in there is agreement with them. So we have to pay that 500 per year forever?
Yeah. Yep.
And that is just,
That's supporting the sort of the national organization that really sort of provides sort of the, they sort of provide the format, the instruction, you know, that the training that you provide coaches, it's sort of like having like in baseball, you know, the Gopher State or the broader organizations that are providing you with sort of the support structure to provide your coaches and things like that.
and that's something then that we would pay that 500 then per year?
Yeah, the way we had sort of looked at it is that we had sort of evolved that into our programming with the city, because we have that's a sort of an emerging programming
Right.
for us as adaptive programming.
Yep.
So, and that, you know, the Rotary may raise the money, but the thing we can really provide as a city, beyond the land to provide it, is really the expertise for programming it.
Okay. All right, I just saw, I kind of forgot about that, but I did want to ask that question about that, so, okay. Anything else? And there is a motion and a second, but I have no idea who did it again.
I don't think there was there?
I moved.
Councilmember Hatfield motion and Councilmember Juan second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion to approve consent? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries, moves to action item. 11A is a public hearing, adopting resolution 2022-95, approving the drainage and utility easement vacation over Hazeltine Plaza.
Mayor and Councilmember, this item coming in front of you is, this is more of a cleanup of the title of that property up there back in 1997, and this would have been closer to when the Chaska Commons to the south was developed. There's that drainage area that's just south of Coles was created, and then there was drainage utility easements that were put up on the Hazeltine Plaza site. When they came through and did the development of the Hazeltine Plaza site, they created their own drainage and utility easements, but didn't necessarily take the ones created in 1997 off. So we don't need the ones that were in 97. We need the ones that were part of the Hazeltine Plaza one. So they're trying to clean title and have requested that actually get removed. We've looked at it. There's no reason to have it there. In fact, it's just confusing to have the two on record there. So we're making the recommendation that we do move to vacate the 1997 drainage and utility easements that weren't removed from that plat. This does have to be a public hearing because we are vacating the easement, but staff is recommending that we move in that direction.
Questions for Matt? Is that really about selling that one section for that?
It's definitely in preparation for it. The property owner's wanting to have everything clear for the title to be able to sell that.
Because it's just, it was just bigger than what they needed? Is that what it is? 'Cause
No, it's sort of two conflicting ones. I mean, they did the work initially when Chaska Commons was done, and obviously that area to the north before it was developed had to drain somewhere. So they created the drainage easements. Well, when they went and graded the whole site and made Kohl's and Park Dental, where the drainage went was more in how they graded it. So they weren't needed anymore. They just weren't removed.
All right. all part of the cleaning up of stuff that we got out there. Okay. All right, any other questions? Anyone willing to make a motion?
You gotta
Well, I
have
gotta
a
do a
public
public
hearing.
hearing first. All right, so, with that, we will open the public hearing at 8:10. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on behalf of the draining and utility easement vacation at Hazeltine Plaza? Kevin, anybody online? No. All right, and I have nobody here in the chambers, so I'm gonna move forward to 8:11 and close the public hearing. And with that, is there somebody willing to make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-95?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hubbard. And again, this is 2022-95 and approving the drainage utility easement vacation at Hazeltine Plaza, which is really a cleanup, so. All right, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. Moves us to 11B, adopt resolution 2022-97, authorizing statewide public works mutual aid pact.
Mayor and Councilmember, actually, the next two items are really sort of related together, and I know that Chief has a presentation involved with it. This, just to give you a little background, this comes out of a lot of the unrest that we saw back a couple of years ago, and probably a lot of the lessons that were learned from communities on what do you need to be prepared for if that if those types of events might occur in the community. So I know Brian Jung and then Chief have been working with other agencies to sort of talk about how can we be prepared for those types of events if they do occur, and how do we make sure that we're sort of sharing our resources amongst cities so it doesn't become instance where, you know, for instance, you know, if you had to put a fence up around a facility, actually getting a fence is not easy, especially if you want insurmountable fence. And so being able to have an actual fence that can be deployed that this group owns, I mean, these become really important type of things to be able to do. Not everybody has to own it, but somebody should. So that's the type of stuff that Chief is going to talk about here and talk about, you know, at least from staff's perspective, why we really think it'd be critical and important to be part of this consortium so that we can be part of, you know, sharing resources if we find ourselves in a situation.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll try to go through this as efficiently as I can and leave time for questions. So as Matt explained, this started as a result of the unrest that was seen largely in Hennepin County within the past several years. And the fencing consortium, and I promise I'll explain exactly what this means, but it started in the spring of 2021 and was a conversation amongst the Hennepin County Chiefs of Police Association. From there, it quickly grew beyond Hennepin County, and now it's become a metro or region-wide initiative, if you will. So the goal of this consortium from the onset and to this day is to establish a means to set up, to first procure, and then set up an anti-scale fence as soon as possible around a police department or a city hall after what I would call a no-notice critical incident. So this might be an officer-involved shooting, it might be an in-custody death, something that brings controversy or attention to that police department or to the city. Like Matt had mentioned, there's issues outside of this consortium with procuring a fence when you need it. And quite frankly, when we talk about the particular fence in a minute, it's the availability. The non-scalable fence, which I'll talk about, there's just several of them, to the best of my knowledge, located at different vendors throughout the country. And I think the closest one currently is in Illinois, if memory serves me correctly. Also, that timely response capacity is vital. If something critical were to occur, there is a very narrow window in which that would need to be brought to the site and set up. Transportation is a concern, even in a smaller site, such as our City Hall and Police Department. We're looking at 1,100, linear feet approximately, which would be several trucks and trailers from what I understand. So you'd have the transportation factors as well as the overall staffing and the training elements that go into play of setting that up. Next slide, Kevin. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what this anti-scale fence means, and I'll show you a picture of it constructed in a minute. It doesn't look like Fort Knox, but it is an 8-foot tall fence, which does have 4-foot wide panels down on the base, and that's on both sides. So that's something that can't be tipped over. So if somebody does actually stand on that, it re-secures, or it actually secures that fence more with their body weight. It can't be flipped over. The slats in between parts of the fence, they're too small for fingers or other things to go in there to help people scale that fence. And also with this fence, and I'll talk about Sergeant Peshik in a minute, we did submit a map of our particular facility and where we would need to have doors put in, where we would need to have larger doors for vehicles and things to be accommodated. So we also looked at continuity of City Hall operations. So you would be able to have a door that could open and close and things. So there are some options if it does have to go up. Next slide, Kevin. So this depicts two very similar fences. The one on the top was put outside of the Brooklyn Center Police Department, and the one down on the bottom, I don't know when this was done. It's outside of the XL Energy Center.
It's probably the Republican National Convention.
I think you're right. So as you can see, you have the 4-foot base down on the bottom, and then the 8-foot height. You can see that guy relatively standing next to it. Doesn't have barbed wire or anything that you'd see on a military base. But again, the keys here, it's very difficult to scale because of the placement of the actual fence pieces, and then with that, the base on the bottom. Next slide, Kevin. So you might ask yourself, why anti-scale fencing? One of the biggest things for me as a police chief is to take a look at this as actually a tool to de-escalate a particular situation. So if we can set up a reliable and secured fence, I would argue that that necessitates less police officers in situations where we have demonstrators, or maybe we do have would-be rioters. If you have a secured fence, an adequate fence, you can stage a lot of those mobile field force resources out of sight. So if you think about our site here, do we put them inside of the garage downstairs? Do we put them inside the building so you can keep the officers out of sight and hopefully not agitate the crowd? It also has afforded us the opportunity to pre-plan how that fence would be assembled here, how the perimeter would look, working in consultation with Public Works. Sergeant Peshik has put together that map, which if we were to join the Fence Consortium would be used under a joint powers agreement to get the fence set up. And again, that reduced need for crowd control measures. I can't overemphasize that. Just looking out for the safety of everyone from, it's very difficult sometimes in these situations to differentiate between the peaceful demonstrator and a would-be rioter, but then also law enforcement. There's been situations where adequate fencing was not procured. Officers are literally fighting to maintain the fence. They're getting cinder blocks thrown at them. And then on the flip side of it with the crowds, if you don't have adequate security measures, there's enhanced equipment, tactics, gear, things that would need to be deployed. So again, looking out for the safety of everybody. Next slide, Kevin. The other option that we would have afforded with this pre-plan and a fence would actually be to create space for demonstrations, which, if I remember with our current plan, would be a portion of either the street or the parking lot of City Hall. But again, it's trying to reduce that perspective and eliminate that perspective to the extent that we can of officers versus protesters. Also, hopefully reduce officers being visible that might be wearing quote-unquote riot gear, or what I would call mobile field force gear, by keeping them out of sight. And also giving us the ability, hopefully, to make a distinction between a peaceful demonstrator and a would-be rioter, because we can allocate resources to hopefully observe that crowd. But also, I can't understate the importance of this, but if it is more calm, cool, and collect in these kind of situations, our ability to communicate with organizers of demonstrations is key, where we can be on the same page, we can identify areas where demonstrations are allowed and just have that two-way communication back and forth, as compared to when a situation is dynamic and we're trying to prevent property damage. We're not going to have that capacity. Also, the one thing that we can't ignore, especially as a smaller law enforcement agency, is we're too small to do this on our own, even with our public works, and I'll get into that in a minute. But hopefully with an adequate fence, that reduces the overall amount of officers that we would need, because we also have to take a look at continuity of our operations on the street. We're still going to have to respond to emergencies and be proactive as a police department. And also the fence gives us the opportunity to recognize that demonstrations or protests could be protracted events. And what I mean by that is you might have a riot situation at one moment, or you might have property damage, then those people might leave and you have a normal demonstration, then it might start again. So that ebb and flow is made a little bit more tolerable with site security. Next slide, Kevin. So why the consortium? One of the biggest things is the cost savings that comes into play, which I'll explain in a moment, but it is taking the overall lease cost and dispersing that amongst membering agencies or cities that are part of the consortium, as where I believe to purchase the fence with a certain amount of linear feet, we were approximately looking at about $5 million for the fence. If purchased alone, it would be about $5 million. So the cost savings is significant, and I'll get into it in a minute. It's a minimal cost. But one of the big things with the consortium, which you'll see, I think the action item 2B, it talks about a public works mutual aid agreement, which is vital and is necessary before joining a consortium, because what that brings on board is each public works agency from a membering or partnering community through that mutual aid pact agrees to send somewhere between 1 to 3 public works staff who would train annually, and they would know how to set up the fence. As we're here, we simply would not have the resources to set that fence up on our own, because I believe their team calls for about 90 public works personnel in the event that it has to be deployed. Also through that training, it provides experience in leadership to effectively and quickly get that fence set up when needed. Next slide, Kevin. Some of the logistics involved, and some of this will be worked out by the board once eventually it is established for the fence consortium. But locating, number one, where will this be stored within a 7-county metro area? Again, trying to get that fence to any partnering entity as soon as possible. The vendor would be responsible for transporting the fence from whatever said storage facility to the location. Public works staff would be subject to that on-call system. They would set up, unload and then set up the fence. And then if needed, depending upon the situation, there would also be a mutual aid with the different police departments to provide temporary security for the public works staff in the event that that fence was getting set up and they were taking bottles or other types of concerns were present. Next slide, Kevin. So I had mentioned this already, but each membering city would supply somewhere between 1 to 3 public works staff members. And I have talked to our public works director, and he has sufficient interest and enthusiasm from some of his staff members. I know that included in your packet, I did include in there the Public Works Mutual Aid Pact for reference, but just a few highlights I wanted to throw out there is that there's no fixed cost to participate in that mutual aid pact. And this isn't all just about protest situations and things, it's in general. But a requesting party can call upon another participating city for any type of mutual aid as it relates to public works. The decision to request aid or to accept it would either be at the discretion of the city administrator or the public works director, and each party is responsible for their equipment and staff when it is deployed.
Haven't we been part of that pact for a long time? We've been sending...
It has never been a formal pact. It's just been an informal network of people that, hey, I need help. Can you send something?
Because this Public Works is not a new pact. That's been around, right?
This is something that's being created as part of this fence consortium. There's an association of public works directors that communicate with each other that we definitely have been deployed to different ones, but this formalizes it more.
I could swear that there's already one out there, and I've worked on some of that in the past, that there's already been a Public Works mutual aid, but maybe that was Hennepin County, they never had it out this, I don't know.
And that was a question I had for Brian Jung, and then also dealt, I mean, this comes away, kind of the leader on this from Public Works is the City of Crystal Public Works Director, and he checked records in To the best of our knowledge, there is no ratified or approved agreement with our city. So again, the total team would be intended to be about 90 people that would be trained and be able to set up the fence. Each member city would cover their own public works staff time. So of those 90 people, our city of Chaska would only be on the hook for our participating public works employees. And then obviously we would staff police and fire based on needs and conditions.
To me, this is really similar to what we've done in practice. I mean, we've made a practice of sending people to mutual aid events, because quite frankly, someday it's gonna happen to us. And so you want those people to show up at your door too when that happens.
Now, when we say 1 to 3 public work staff, 2 are on vacation, you just send 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at our discretion of who we send.
Right, well, that's what, to me, it's not enough trained at it, personally. I think, I don't know how.
Should be
I
like a
can't-
rotating
It
thing?
can't be, I don't know, I can't think that it'd be that challenging that we couldn't try to get some few extra people. And I just know I know how it goes, working with a small department in the past. You need 1 to 3 people, but all of a sudden, 1's sick and 2 on vacation. Now what do you do? I mean, I think you should look at that moving forward. How can you do that? Can you
get more people trained?
Yes.
And I do believe, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but Brian Jung had more interest, and he was supportive of offering up more individuals, because I agree, Mayor.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. When I started reading this, I'm thinking, Public Works Mutual Aid, why is the chief doing it? Why isn't Brian here? That was kind of,
It's sort of tied to it was all tied to the Fence Consortium, that you can't join the Fence Consortium unless you also agree to join the Public Works. Because if you don't, then you're not providing staff.
I'll tie it all together in a minute, I promise. And I had to bug.
Oh, by the way, he's the new Public Works Director too.
You don't want me doing that. And Brian did a considerable amount of work reviewing this for me, and I told him that if he was willing to do that I'd give him a pass on being here, so.
all right, as long as he's totally comfortable.
Already a partnership between, see,
Yeah.
working out deals.
Next slide, Kevin, please. So down to the cost. So this will be variable on the number of cities that end up joining the Fence Consortium, but there is a benefit to become an original member community, which I think we hit there until September 22nd is the deadline. But what is projected at this point, again, it's at 1,100 linear feet. It would cost us about $4,200 annually, and look at this essentially as a lease for availability. In the event that we did have to get that fence assembled, we're not going to be paying for public works time for outside entities to set that up. But likely a fee would be assessed, and I don't know what that's going to look like yet, for the continued deployment, and it probably would be billed monthly. And that's going to be determined by the original board. That's going to stand up, and assuming tonight that this is approved, I will be one of those original representatives for law enforcement. There's going to be 2 law enforcement representatives that are going to kind of set the standard operating procedures and secure a whole bunch of other things, which I might touch on a few of them here in a minute. But there would be an additional fee in the event that it has to be deployed, but I would argue at that point, I mean, we're truly talking about something that could jeopardize the building. It could jeopardize safety in our immediate area around City Hall. So again, that 4,200 would be for availability. Currently, the Fence Consortium and the Joint Powers Agreement has been adopted by 15 cities as of last week, but 53 total communities or police agencies have submitted maps thus far. Next slide, Kevin. So when it comes to fencing availability, this would not be something for planned demonstrations or protests. Would not be used to protect a courthouse. It wouldn't be used for festivals or other types of events. This truly is for the unplanned controversial incident. And the way it would work, again, the fence board is going to come up with SOPs, but when this critical incident occurs, whether it's Chaska or another community, we would contact that Fence Consortium board and make a request for fence deployment. Then they would consider the request, they would take a look at all factors involved. Again, that initial board is going to be 2 police representatives, 1 fire, 1 public works, and 1 emergency management person. Next slide, Kevin. So next steps, here's where I promised I'll put it all together. So again, September 22nd is that deadline to be an original member community. So there's two things as action items tonight. The first is that statewide Public Works Mutual Aid Pact, which established in the Fence Consortium, JPA, has to be ratified first, because that's kind of the foundational step for the Joint Powers Agreement and the Fence Consortium, is to have that labor in place, which is only possible through that Public Works Mutual Aid Pact. So that would be the first item. And then the second is authorizing the Fence Consortium Joint Powers Agreement. And in that Joint Powers Agreement, it talks about, the board, the need to establish insurance as part of the Fence Consortium board, and just kind of all of the logistics established through that. So if both of these were authorized or approved tonight, we would become an original member community. In the event that that were to occur, I would send the Joint Powers Agreement and also the Mutual Aid Pact to a representative that's been established, and we officially would join that Joint Powers Agreement.
Advantages to being an original member? You said there were advantages.
Cost. So I don't know exactly what additional costs will be levied in the future, and that's going to be determined by the board once it's stood up this fall. But I would imagine that there will be additional fees to join after the fact. I just don't know what those are going to look like yet.
Does this go forever, or like how long of a commitment? Is it just, we'll need to recommit annually?
Annually,
Okay.
would be kind of from the cost perspective, but at any time, for whatever reason, if we felt that the direction the Fence Consortium board was headed, or if it wasn't in the interest of the city, I mean, the Joint Powers Agreement can be dissolved. It's just more or less the financial partnership is annual.
I don't know if you said this, so I apologize if you did. What if more than one city needs fence?
Yeah.
Like, what if
That was my
all
question.
hell breaks loose? It's all of us.
And
We
that's-
all need fence.
And that's a great question, and that's something that the board,
Mine too.
when they establish those standard operating procedures, are going to be vital. So the way it works in terms of the fence procurement in the lease contract is they are purchasing enough fence via lease to cover the largest police department in the consortium, which memory doesn't serve me who that is, but I think they're close to 4,000 or 5,000 linear feet. So in the event that it was deployed there, availability will be sparse, but there's also been conversation to purchase more fence to cover the largest police department in the consortium, and then also cover some of the smaller ones. So again, when I talk about the possibility of some impacts and things on the lease, I mean, that is another variable that will have to be defined, but currently it would cover the largest police department.
Can you go back a slide for me? Or-
One real quick thing on that side of it too is that this group did make a request as part of the bonding bill this last year, and I think it was actually, nobody really knows what was in the bonding bill, but we think this was in the bonding bill, so I do think that this seems like a logical one, that if there was a second fence that would, or a second set of fences, or, lineal footage that's added, it does seem like a logical one that would be picked up by a state bonding request.
Yeah, before you go on, it's on the same topic, because I'm not real convinced that what you said there is that, so under the current situation, what would have happened a few years ago when we had all that going on, if all of a sudden we had an officer involved shooting out here for some reason, we wouldn't have fence. So I'm not sure that I'm seeing that this is beneficial. It's beneficial if it just happens here, but not if there's all of this multiple stuff happening.
But you have to consider that right now,
We wouldn't have fence.
you wouldn't have fence. And so this is, to me, this is an insurance policy, a cheap insurance policy to have some ability to be able to get fence
You
that.
know where they're gonna go first.
But when
Not
when
coming
you,
here.
but when you see incidents happen, they tend, the incidents tend to be revolved around the agency where the
Yeah,
incident
I was just gonna
happens.
say,
You don't
yeah.
typically see it where it's gonna be everybody. Like when Brooklyn Center happened, it was Brooklyn Center.
Yeah.
Now Minneapolis is a little different
Well, but
because-
that's what I'm saying, if heck breaks out in Minneapolis, and then something happens out here, it's clear, we're not getting nothing.
So,
But I think the point is if we're not a part of it and something happens here, we're still not getting fence, right?
yeah.
I get that,
Fair.
and I understand.
To me,
that,
that's why it's a
but-
cheap insurance policy that, yes, could something happen twice? Yes, absolutely, but,
Prior to what happened, I would say, yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree. But I've seen what happened.
Yeah, but also look at when that happened 2 years ago, did we have an incident happen here at our station? Did someone do something here?
No.
No. No. So, if something were to happen in Minneapolis, like to Matt's point, or in Brooklyn Center, it's usually is isolated to where, what precinct that the incident occurred.
I guess the question would be, is Minneapolis part of this?
No.
Yes.
Because when you
I
don't
mean,
know
when we're
who,
talking.
when you don't know who's who, I don't know.
I guess the point of it is, these are suburban communities that are trying to, that, could two suburban communities have something at the same time? Yes. But, you're right, who's gonna suck most of the resources is gonna be a city like Minneapolis. But this is not Minneapolis, this is,
Well, that changes things.
yeah,
some, but-
these are communities that surround the central cities that are looking to try to find a way to have a chance at being able to get something that would be almost impossible to get if we didn't.
So Chief, what are some of the other member communities
Well-
that are part of this?
I had questions.
You're on
That's
hold,
all right.
you're up, you're up.
Okay, thank you.
You're on
I
hold.
had them go back to this slide for a reason. So, the board, the representatives, is this from other agencies, or is this two police, one fire? Is this purely from Chaska, this board that's on this slide here?
Great question, and I did not clarify. So that's from all different agencies.
Okay.
The only requirement is that to serve on the board, you have to be from a member-in community.
Sure.
So the way it stands, if all things, are created equal and people end up, through their councils get this authorized, I believe, obviously me would be representative from the police. I believe there's someone from the St. Paul Police Department is another representative. I forget the fire community, but I think it's the Hennepin County Emergency Manager.
Will these be,
I think so.
will these be positions that would be rotated then, like termed or whatever it is? And then when you talk about a critical incident happening and that they establish the parameters that define that and the deployment. I mean, I'm assuming that this has to happen really quickly if okay.
Yeah,
Because that's it. It's like, well, if they're not going to meet until next Tuesday or something like that, then.
you'd have to deliberate very quickly and follow whatever kind of a playbook went into place. And it's going to be a best faith effort on the part of the initial board to try to define what is a critical incident, because it takes so many different forms. But I would argue it's something that, clearly could exhaust a particular agency's resources. It's something with a high likelihood for controversy, public interest. So there's a lot of variables that go into it.
So they're not going to set the bar so high that a smaller city such as ours would. Okay.
No, I would argue that the triggering factor will be very similar across all agencies. And you're right, timing is of the essence. It's very important to move quickly. It's almost one of those things that you know it when you see it, especially in law enforcement. You just kind of get this intuitive sense like, wow, this might not go well. And it's trying to define what that looks like from a SOP standpoint. To your first question, yes, the board does rotate. I think each position is annual,
Okay.
but staggered. So with the two police representatives, they don't
Yeah, both leave
exit
at
at the
once.
same time.
Sure. No, I mean, that would have been my concern is like, who's serving on this board and is it, from an equitable standpoint of where our community sits in relationship to other communities, would we, if we needed something, would we be given a fair shot to actually get it, so.
We would, and the most difficult part of defining these elements is kind of to the mayor's point, I would call it the worst-case scenario, and albeit very rare, but on the occasions that you have multiple incidents occurring, you don't have enough fence. I mean, those are going to be some very difficult decisions, but, I would classify that as a very rare occurrence where that would occur. Otherwise, again, I mean, all things would be considered equal for membering communities, so whatever that threshold is for fence deployment, that would be applied equitably across the board.
Great, thank you.
Michael?
Okay, so, actually, so I have two questions. Actually, one of them is actually a follow-up from the questions that Taylor just asked, which was from a fence, so from a perspective of, like, if you have, I'll come back to that question in a bit, because I want to frame that a little bit more. But how many, or can you name some of the different communities that are involved with this fencing program?
Let me grab my cell phone. I'll
Sure.
be able to tell you.
Yep.
I think there's 15 agencies currently.
Yep.
See how well I can navigate my saved items. Bear with me.
In the meantime, Mayor, to just briefly touch on your question from earlier about the number of public works staff personnel, the team that they're ideally looking to put together is 90. Would they expect a third would make it for a call out? So they know that they would only need that 30 people. They could take as many as 90, but they know that so they built that buffer in knowing that they're, like you said, if we have 3 on the team and 2 of them on vacation, that factor
I
is.
I kind of figured that, but it's just as long as they did think about that.
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, and I just remember that from my stuff.
I brought him here for a reason. Thank you. So some of the partnering communities that have already adopted the Fence Consortium as of, I think, last week or perhaps 2 weeks ago, City of Blaine, Bloomington, Columbia Heights, Eden Prairie, Fridley, Hopkins, Maplewood, Minnetonka, New Brighton, Oakdale, Osseo, Spring Lake Park, St. Louis Park, and Stillwater.
Okay, so most of them are actually in the south, the west and southwest. Okay. Got it. Except for Blaine and Stillwater. There's a couple outliers there.
In
Yeah, but they have until September, so who knows who's
Yeah.
gonna be
Yeah,
on
there's
it.
53 people who,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's just,
I would expect that a good number of those 53 agencies are probably going
Yeah.
to choose to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, this is just like the early first pass of who's most
It-
interested. Yeah.
Absolutely, and, as more communities join, more money will get thrown into the consortium, which, whether it's, through the bonding bill, if eventually money is secured to purchase a fence, or if we stick with the lease, there's a possibility of procuring more fence, to cover different contingencies. So a lot of this is gonna be variable, again, on number of participating agencies that join the joint powers agreement.
And, are you done?
Yeah, I'll go for now. Yeah.
And then they guarantee to have it for the largest department. That's there on site.
Correct.
But we don't, site is within the metro area.
Within the 7-county metro,
Okay.
correct. At a site to be determined, there have been some locations within an adjacent county that have been looked at that would be suitable for that storage, because the thought is to keep it inside of trailers. So then if a tractor had to
yeah.
pull up, could quickly connect and deploy.
I will tell you from a funding perspective, I really see this being funded through our self-insurance fund. I view this as an insurance policy, that, this is, this is, a way to help ensure that we have some access to something if something
Right.
happens. And it's a really inexpensive way to have some access to something. To get it to a point where, we could cover all situations, I just think it's just too, even if we did it in the southwest metro area, I mean, if you had Eden Prairie, Chanhassen, Chaska, Victoria, Carver, I mean, $5 million would mean that each of us is thrown in $1 million, to go and get fencing, and it's not used very often. I mean, I realize that we've had some incidents in the last couple of years that have definitely changed our perspective on things, but it's a really tough thing for small cities to go out and try to purchase, to be able to guarantee that we can be there. But I do think that as this board gets established, I do think that there's going to be good arguments to make about why the state should be investing into this. And that, starting this board and this consortium is a way to sort of step forward to the state and say, hey, we've put our money where our mouth is. And now it's time for you to step up too. It's not a whole lot different to the funding that we've done with state highways is, we've put our local dollars in and it puts some pressure on the state to be able to put state dollars in.
One other quick question. So, I know that we're still kind of early on, the board hasn't been completely stood up yet. Have we even got to the point where we established the SOPs or SRGs, and like, who has the authority from the city to activate it, or is it something that's still kind of being worked out yet? Or is it each city kind of sort of determines who's the activating authority?
Yeah, commonly, it would be the police chief or designee, would be my assumption. I mean, obviously here and most comparable forms of government, I mean, the city administrator could do the same thing. But if it were here in Chaska, it would be me as the police chief, and I think that would be pretty common amongst membering cities.
Yeah, so it'd be each city would sort of decide, but it'd probably be, police chief.
Yeah,
Okay.
most commonly.
Yep.
Are counties allowed to join?
They would be. There is a caveat when it comes to contract communities and how that would look. So it cannot just be, in a county situation, assuming that they do contract communities, it would have to be to the particular city, in terms of the JPA, the cost, not to the law enforcement agency. So
So Carver County could join, but it would have to be,
It'd have to be for their building.
correct.
It couldn't be for like Carver's City Hall.
oh, okay, so it's for Carver.
But if Carver joined, then
Then
it could be for Carver City Hall, but you couldn't use it for the courthouse.
For the courthouse,
Yeah.
okay. So whoever buys in, it's protecting their building and their building only.
Correct.
Now, how would it work, like the Carver, so like the Carver County Sheriff's Office, or, uses uses one of the buildings down there, but it's kind of interconnected with everything else. Is that,
But the idea is they can secure it inside, it's the outside
Yeah.
keeping people away.
right?
So they can lock that down. And they had it locked down since, I don't even know if it's opened up yet.
Yeah, someone
You
said
know.
they just opened the courtrooms.
So they have that, and they have that, when you go in the court system, you gotta go through a metal detector, so they have their secured areas inside. It's more of keeping outside away.
Well, yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering, because there's just like this interconnectedness between the buildings, the way that the county buildings are set up, but, yeah.
But it's a problem here at our building right now. I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit. Brian and I have about, if you had an incident, it'd be tough to keep the continuity of our services that we have at City Hall without having some kind of protection around there.
We had a fob system, it would help. Oh, never mind, we don't have that. You could hit a button to lock doors. What?
But
I'll stop talking.
I can say this, and in no particular order, but I do believe that we can't underestimate the ability for the fence itself to de-escalate a situation, because in all intents and purposes, it'd be very difficult to secure the perimeter of our City Hall campus, and if we did, it's gonna take a lot of police officers. They're gonna be wearing what most people would call riot gear, and you're probably going to have to employ certain types of tactics and devices to maintain that crowd. In the event-
Honestly, I think we've seen the example of human barrier versus fence barrier right here in the Twin Cities. I mean, there was no question the difference in the ability to be able to de-escalate between Brooklyn Center and Minneapolis. And Minneapolis turned into just a nightmare, where how many people got hurt that didn't need to get hurt, that may have been there peacefully protesting, but they got hurt because they're in the mix of everything. In Brooklyn Center, yeah, there was tons of people that were there, but the people who were there protesting were safe, the officers were safe, it really and it never escalated into something. So to me, we've had the juxtaposition of what it looks like without having a proper barrier and what it looks like with, right here in the Twin Cities.
In along those lines, preserving First Amendment rights, people, given the chance to demonstrate, us being able to coordinate with organizers of demonstrations, I think is enhanced We also do have some tentative plans in place for relocating police services temporarily in the event that we did have to erect the fence, just so if there are crowds here, there's not police cars coming and going, potentially agitating it. So we do have some initial contingency plans on that as well, because we would look at continuity of police services and then also to the city administrator's point, overall city services, doing whatever we can to preserve that, having employees here, allowing the public in during the day, all as part of our on-site plan.
Difficult but necessary conversation.
No, I don't know. I think it's a good thing, and I get it. It's ground floor, and I think it will change, but I think that as this moves forward and our yearly expenses, that they have to keep adding fence. They got it, and I'm sure they're looking at that. I get it, but it just, I don't think there was a time that I would never think that there'd be multiple incidents. I believe now in our world, the chances of multiple incidents are as likely as anything now. So that's the only thing that I just worry if two things happen, that there's only one set of fence.
Wait, what, did you say this earlier, Matt? Is the fence insured then? Like, what if the fence gets hurt?
No, I said
No.
that I viewed it as an insurance
That's what it
policy
was,
for
okay.
us.
And I see it too, because
Yeah.
it is that. I mean, we buy car insurance, we never get anything out of it. I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
It's just,
The fence board would procure insurance
For
for
the-
the fence. So if
Okay.
it's damaged, there's an accident in transit, that would be covered under that insurance policy.
I think that's really good feedback, well, especially since Brian's going to be on the board initially. I think it's really good feedback to be able to provide from cities, though, to say, we probably shouldn't stop here. Because quite frankly, if they could get twice as much fence and we were paying $8,200, it'd still be a great deal. Yeah, I mean,
I've been part of these processes, and
Yeah.
and so like I said, I look at it too, that you have to be moving forward, and you can't just say, okay, we got fence, now we're done. No, we're not done. We've established a foundation, and now we gotta build on it. I guess maybe that's more of my point than anything is that, yeah, I get it. I get the insurance. That's an insurance piece for us. And I think it's a good thing. It's just, as long as they're forward-thinking people on that board.
well,
Can't
maybe you
get
shouldn't be
stale.
on the board. Oh, wait.
Find somebody else.
So, I mean,
Can't get stale.
so I guess, looking forward to like assuming it passes, that we have an update in the next, the next update on this is, and then as the next quarterly update,
Yeah, I think one of the things that'll be interesting, I think, for the chief to come back and talk about is, first of all, how many cities ended up signing up, but then the second thing is, as they get into talking about these standard operating procedures, to be able to come back and talk about, here are the major things that, how we're gonna, deal with this, especially with limited fence, and those SOPs might change, to your point, Mayor, of the more fencing that you get.
So we don't know, to be clear, the true annual cost yet.
Not the exact cost, no.
Okay. That makes me a little apprehensive, but I get it.
Is it no more than 4,200?
That is best estimation on what is projected for the number of participating agencies, because we're set at that 1,100 linear feet, and that is the biggest variable in cost, is how much needs to be on reserve, if you will, for each agency. Let's say that half the amount of membering communities end up joining, which I don't expect to be the case. I mean, I'm not the best at math, but let's say that you doubled that figure from 4,000 to 8,000, I think that would be the impact, because the biggest variable, again, it's the amount of fence that's being retained.
I mean, if less join, our opportunity of getting in is better, but you gotta pay more for it.
Yeah, but I think to Chief's point is, especially when I look at our self-insurance fund, again, if this was $8,000, this would be a great deal. I mean, it's an exceptional deal, I think, at $4,000.
In today's world, whoever brainstormed it was a great idea. I just think it's something that, you know, it's just a thing in our world today, you would never, 10 years ago, you would have went, what? What do you need that stuff for? But it's our world, unfortunately, today, and we have to be prepared for it. We are the people that have to prepare for it, so, like I said, I'm questioning things, but I am in favor of it, and I think it's I think it's a good thing, and yeah. I hope like heck we never have to use it, but it's a good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only comment I'd make is that board really, I think it is important to understand when and how. Because I could see a city getting itself in trouble with the public when a decision, who makes the decision, what doesn't get protected, and something catastrophic happens and gets that question. And so, truthfully, clearly define that who makes that call in what scenarios is probably the key. Because if something happens in a community, everyone's gonna be a second guesser of, well, you're a part of this, why didn't you deploy this? Well, here's why, and everything like that, and.
But that's why they pay him the big.
Correct, and exactly, I'm just saying,
The
like.
buck stops
It's
there.
really just making sure that there's that definition, because anyone can question, why would you let that building go, but you protect a different building, as an example.
I mean, the whole thing is, that you're still limited to what you can get.
Yes.
And you have to protect what it is. And you gotta think about this, that there's a good possibility in 3 years, this isn't the place. It's somewhere else.
When maybe
Now,
more
this
square
building's
footage.
such unprotected.
Well,
Or linear footage.
yeah, the linear footage would be probably twice as much.
Yes.
In,
And then does our fees go up? I suppose it would, yeah.
It would, but I also think there are ways, I mean, assuming that a new facility were to be created, there are ways that you could build this fence off of existing infrastructure or fencing. There's ways that you could probably minimize that impact, or you could do redundant layers of fencing, which.
Yeah,
might
because
be-
there will be security fence already in place there too, so.
So when you build new, would you put this type of fence in right away? Because it probably costs too much,
And also, I mean, if you take a look at security, where I more or less would recommend fencing on a facility that's permanent, is probably to the rear, or areas that I would consider for employee access. And then you want it to be inviting, obviously to the public in the front of the building. So I think that's how you'd look at building it out.
Okay.
chalk this up to a conversation never thought I would have several years ago.
So I said 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had that.
That's a good conversation.
But, yeah.
So do we?
Any other, sorry.
No,
I'm
go
just
ahead.
I was just gonna, any other questions for the chief? With that, then you need it, well, yeah, this is a resolution.
You
so-
should take both of them up separately.
Yep, no. Do we even need a discussion on the other one?
Well, I think we have.
Yeah, no, that's what I
Yeah,
need.
yep.
But I thought the sergeant was gonna get up, I was gonna make him get up and
Well, you
talk.
could.
But I don't need any more people talking. He already got his words in over there. I'm perfectly fine approving 97 and then just moving to 98. I don't think, is there anybody here that thinks they need more discussion? Because one is just joining the Public Works Mutual Aid Pact, and then the other one is joining the Fence Consortium. But that's more with joint powers, that
Yeah,
gets-
and the reason we separate them again was because you
They are
can't, we
different.
couldn't take action on the second without first
Right.
taking action on the
Yep.
first.
Yep, no, I get it. And it's joint powers, you don't want to tie it with something else.
Yeah.
Because it takes council to remove the joint powers as well, so. Or council action, I should say. All right, what I'm looking for is adoption, unless someone's got more questions, I'm looking for resolution 2022-97, authorizing statewide Public Works Mutual Aid Pact, joining it.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Gra. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we'll move to adopting resolution 2022-98, and that's authorizing to join the Fence Consortium Joint Powers Agreement.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hubbard. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Go buy some fence. All right, we move to 12 bills. Anyone have a comment on a bill?
No, just a quick comment, though, that I see the report's format has changed a little bit. So-
Yeah, so it's actually we have our updated Munis version that they got done, so the report comes out a little bit differently now.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it kind of looks like it has more stuff, but then is there actually more text on the comment field? Because I'm not sure that there actually is.
Yeah, I don't know that there is either.
Because it still looks like things are kind of truncated, but it still looks like it's a little bit more cleaner anyway, but, okay. But I didn't have any questions.
Okay. Anyone interested in making a motion on the bills?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember, real enthusiastic second.
I didn't think I was gonna have to do it, but no one else was.
But second by Happy here, Councilmember Hubbard. Discussion. Elise, please.
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong?
Aye.
Councilmember McGraw?
Yes.
Mayor Winchell?
And I absolutely do.
Oh, wow.
Such conviction.
All right, moves us to other business. I am gonna start with Councilmember Hubbard tonight. 'cause
I
she's-
knew you were
Because
gonna
she's so
do
happy
that
today.
to me.
Well, I can skip you.
No,
Okay.
I am so happy.
I know.
No, no, I don't have very much, but I just had a couple of things. I just gotta open up my notes. First, this last week, the Community Center Task Force met as a group, and I and Councilmember Grau were in attendance with some others. They're still in the public engagement phase of things, and they're still meeting with different stakeholder groups. I think they've met primarily with the leaseholders of the building and some other, the athletic groups, special entity groups. But I think their last kind of missing piece of the puzzle is just the general public that uses the facility to kind of round in.
And then those that don't.
And yes, and
Yeah.
those that don't. And so they're right now they're formulating a survey. They have one, it sounds like, on the website, or it will be up on their
Yeah.
specified website. That's a real simple survey to kind of engage feedback, but they're gonna come up with a structured survey to, maybe Councilmember Grau can correct me. It sounds like maybe direct people to a website to fill out the survey. It doesn't sound like it was gonna be in the mail. It sounded like they decided against that during the meeting, but.
That's correct. I mean, the conversation was about the importance of it needs to be statistically significant. There we
Yes.
go. That's the two words put together. Because of sample size versus if you open it if it's just a website and a link, doesn't sound like there's much variability in what they would suspect. There's timing issues with that, because you gotta mail them, you gotta send them back, they gotta mail them back, and so we had that conversation. But it really is that intent to kind of get those individuals who are users or non-users of what those needs are.
Yeah, so right now they're just crafting those questions, and as a task force, before they send out, sounds like we'll be able to review and give input on the questions before that part is gone. And then they threw out some different strategic ideas as far as things with the community center, but nothing concrete at that point, so just kind of some big picture ideas. So, I mean, that's, I guess, my recap of it. Otherwise, just couple things. Night to Unite's tomorrow. So get with your neighborhood, have a party. I know there's a lot of them that are planned.
I believe she said 86 parties.
Did she? Okay.
86.
I
86
think that's what
parties.
she told me.
Well, I think when we started that, I think it was like 40-something.
Yeah, I think,
Grown.
I talked to her at the park, and she was going through her list, and I thought,
62 cars. Oh,
Sorry.
It came from his mouth.
I couldn't remember.
It's the voice
80 or
inside my
60.
head that came out.
All right, sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm glad. Since I get to be the first one that goes, I've got to come up with the specified information and stuff. Just a couple other things. The Chaska Community Center has their fall guide out, and sign up registration for, different things like, swimming lessons, skating, different programs. That's all out for residents and community members today. And there is the park facilities party coming up. I'll let the other council members, sorry, that was aggressive, promote theirs, but mine for Ward 2 is on Wednesday, August 10th, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the community park, 115100 Mark Road. So, and then just a last thing, River City Days this last weekend was an absolutely wonderful event. It was really fun to see the crowd, see everyone enjoying themselves, the craft booth vendors and all the, different agencies that had tables there like WeCab and even our police department fitting the bicycle helmets and all the different people that participated, and just a really big thank you. It's not a city run festival. I know we partner and help, promote it and participate in it, but there was a lot of volunteers, I know, with the River City Days community that works really, really hard to make that happen, and just a really big thank you for that. And that's it for me.
Councilmember Juan.
Okay, thank you. So let's see. So for past events, in addition to River City Days, which is it's well attended, great turnout, great weather for the weekend. We also had a picnic with the police that was on July 21st, and that one, just the turnout was phenomenal as well. I believe that I heard they ran out of hamburger buns, something like at almost 40 minutes or an hour before the event actually wrapped. So it was it's one of those things where that's probably the best problem to hear about. There's so many people that we actually ran out of food. So certainly look forward to a great event next year as well, and looking forward to fantastic turnout. And I think the best thing about events like that is that accomplishes what we're hoping to accomplish, which is to to build those bonds, those bridges between the police and the members of the community. It was great to see just members of the community from all walks of life, all ages, really diverse turnout. Really fantastic to see. So definitely something that's very heartwarming to see that engagement. Also, there was the Bark in the Park that took place at Fireman's Park on the 27th. I don't know, was anyone able to attend that one?
We had the task force.
Yep. So that was also going on. 19th, that's that one's coming up tomorrow. So I know that was mentioned, but certainly looking forward to attending that as well. As well as the facility park party for Ward 4, which will be at McKnight Park from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And that will be on Wednesday, August 17th. And of course, Touch a Truck's coming up at the community center on August 18th from 5 to 7:30. And the last but not least is on Sunday, August 28th, Art in the Park from 11 to 5 at Fireman's Park. That's all I've got.
Okay, Councilmember Grau.
So I don't forget it, I will talk about my facility park party, which is Thursday, August 11th at Veterans Park from 5:30 to 7:30. It might be a contest between all our council members of which night can be the best weather. That might be interesting to see. Hope it's fantastic for everyone.
Yeah.
But especially you.
But especially mine. Just so everyone wants to come out. So I'll mention that, I'll just comment on the community center task force as well. I think you did a great job covering some of the details. Again, I'll just say I'm just most impressed with the community involvement. The task force has been good, and people have good input, and I think it's been a good run process. And, there's going to be some, I think, difficult and fun decisions to make. I think that, I think it's very loud and clear that we've heard from feedback that parking's a problem. Shocker, right? Yep, exactly. And again, I'd love to say here that they magically found hundreds extra spaces just sitting around, so that will continue to be a topic of conversation, because you got the land and what you got, right? But just the questions and, you know, the thoughts and the perspectives. I think it's just been a great experience to be a part of. And, you know, I think those community members who have participated, I think the community participated in giving feedback has been helpful as well. Question, how's the water tower painting going?
Completely enclosed today. So
Yeah.
they must be sandblasting outside already.
Yeah, I think they finished the inside sandblasting. You know, they take up and down the cloth every night. So, yeah, when I left this morning, it was down. When I came back, it was up. So it's for the sandblasting on the outside.
So, I mean, all indications that, you know, I know when we heard about weather is a big factor, usually wind, I think is what, no major delays, they're still kind of meeting their expectation. Just curious. I know it's getting some attention because you see people way up there.
Yeah.
People are wondering what's going on and everything like that.
Yeah,
but-
we were at a picnic at Community Park and you look up there and there are people walking on top.
So it's scary.
Long ways.
It scares me from being down here on the ground. It looks so small. That must mean it's really high up there. And then lastly, I'll just talk about the, you know, Chaska River City Days, a couple observations. One, you know, again, I think I saw more vendors in the park than historically. I feel like there were spaces kind of behind that were filling in with other vendors, which was great. You know, I think the parade, you know, it was, again, probably similar size, but seems a little longer because it was nice that we're early in it. So my son was super excited because he gets to go back and get all the candy that he tossed out. It's like, how'd that work out? You're sharing that with your brother, which you did. But it was just good to see. It's just, there's that thirst again, you know, I think not a lot good came out of COVID with everything locked down, but kind of that appreciation for gathering again. I think you've energized people. You know, talk to people not from Chaska, which is always fun, and just welcoming them to come here. You know, the individuals from WeCab talked about how cities around the area are calling because they saw the booth at the Chaska River City Days. And then a shout out to the Chaska Fire Department for first place in the Water Wars. That's exciting. My kids love that thing. They just love the splash zone and they just love being soaked. So it's such a fun event just to see people watching people spray water. I mean, it's as simple as that, but it attracts a huge crowd and a lot of excitement and a nice trophy to go along with everything they win, so.
Can I say something in regards to
You
that?
certainly can.
There was a person that had a medical emergency during that, and I think it was really a powerful statement to, I mean, not only our fire department, but neighboring fire departments that were participating in water fights. I mean, everyone dropped everything that they were doing and went to aid this individual, and it was kind of nerve-wracking to watch and kind of scary, but it was also kind of powerful and, you know, and kind of awesome to watch in sort of a way, to witness that, to see, you know, the water fight paused, you know, and everyone kind of attending to that person. And honestly, it was like, you know, if you're going to have a medical emergency out there, that might have been one of the safer places. Not that, you know, you'd want that, but anyways, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
No, it's good.
No,
It's a good comment.
And along with that, that's the thing that we talk about in training all the time. You know, if you do CPR training, you always tell somebody to call 911, somebody call 911. Well, these guys are used to they are 911. Nobody called 911 for an ambulance.
I figured it just took,
you can
I figured it
laugh
took a
about it,
while for them
but
to get in there,
Chief
but.
Weavy was there and he went over there and he just was observing and he said, anybody call 911?
Yeah.
So yeah, somebody had to go off the call. But that's what happens when responders go direct and don't, because normally you go.
Yeah,
and-
you're the person.
Yeah, you don't think about that because
Yeah.
they're always coming, but.
Well, I went
not
and was
unless somebody
like,
called.
he needs help, Will Stu.
So.
Last comment, just make sure you're paying attention then tomorrow and as the heat temperatures and similar, like connected to this, you know, it can sneak up on you. The heat it's going to be pretty hot here and pretty humid and just be mindful of your what your body's telling you. If you have any vulnerable adults in your life or house, you know, check on them during the day. I think that's important as well, and just make sure you're drinking lots of fluids because it's going to
I
get
didn't
hot.
realize
It's
it's
going to
supposed
get
to be humidity
100
tomorrow.
degrees.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like over 100 and yeah, it's gonna be hot. So, and that is all I have for this evening.
75 and sunny on my computer all day now. So,
That's all I have this evening.
all right. Councilmember Hatfield.
All right. I'll skip the things that have already been mentioned. Wednesdays are the farmers markets, so those have been looking packed lately, so that's good. The shoulder to shoulder event, which, the chief spoke about earlier, is on 8/13. Food distribution on 8/18, and then the sensory friendly safety day is 8/31, which was also mentioned. So those are all coming up this month, in addition to everything else that was mentioned. I too want to thank River City Days. I know that team with a new executive director just really tried to go above and beyond this year, and they did a really good job. I also want to thank the staff that put our booth together. It was a big booth this year, but it was really good, and really good conversations. I think probably the best conversations I've had in the few years I've done River City Days happened during my shift on Saturday. So it was nice to not only talk about Highway 41 and the facilities, but having the board there with who's your council member opened up conversation for other things like we need a sidewalk on Audubon, we need crossing walk here. So I think that was really good just to get to feel a little bit more connected and approachable about more than just what we had in the booth or light bulbs, fidget spinners, things like that. So thanks to all the staff that helped put that together. And thanks to everyone who came into the booth and talked to us. And it was just, like I said, really good conversation. I actually felt utilized during that time, so that was nice. Ward 3, arguably the best party will be happening Tuesday, August 16th at Lions Park. So, just saying.
Keyword arguably.
I'm just saying, like,
And
there
that's
might be
regardless of
balloon
weather.
garland. Like,
Oh.
when you have an event planner being, the council member, maybe it's gonna be good. Anyways, are we gonna have, I got my voter registration card in the mail, which mentioned the polling place change. So I've already had a couple people mention it to me, but it's very small. Do we have a campaign? I know that it's a little bit further out, but,
Well, I think because it's primaries.
yeah,
It's probably
primaries,
a good
yeah,
idea.
right. Like, do we have anything, Kevin, anyone ready to go?
I
I was
was
gonna post something
It'd be
personally,
at
but.
least.
Yeah, we can work to get some additional information out over the
Okay.
next week, because
Yeah, it's the
primaries
ninth,
are a
Right.
week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be good, because I think that was one thing when we were talking about changing the polling places was really important. I would hate for someone not to know where to go vote and then not vote. That would make me very sad. So, yeah, okay, good. And that's all I had.
All right. Elise,
I don't have any updates.
Jake,
I was at River City Days. Kevin gave me a yo-yo. I'm very happy to have it.
Are you gonna demonstrate any
I
tricks?
saw you there, and then you came up and said hi. I
Did you
thought
do
that
the
was-
little walk the dog or like the little?
I can do a few tricks. I won't do any
Not
tonight.
ready for prime time. Okay.
Not in front of the millions of people watching.
Chief, you got anything to add?
New career.
You don't have a yo-yo
Matt.
tricks, by any chance?
I got one thing. So I am going to be staffing the booth for the facilities on Thursday night at the AOA picnic, which is from 5:30 to 7. And if anybody wants to join me for that, feel free. I know the mayor talked about stopping by a little bit. But let me know if you have some time during that, because I want to make sure we don't violate any open meeting laws. But we are having, there's like a little prize that we're having that people can sign up for to get if they come up and visit the booth. So we're going to try to create some incentive. Something tells me that we're not going to have to create a lot of incentive to get this group to come up and have
Right.
conversations with us, but we are, and so I think this is a really good opportunity to get out information about the facility program. So again, it's 5:30 to 7 this Thursday night, and if anybody wants to join me, maybe just drop me an email, and then I'll coordinate based on how many people I hear from.
I will be there in a short time, 5:30. I gotta be somewhere at 6, so. I thought it was 5. I was hoping that was 5, but it is 5:30, so.
That's all I have.
All right, a few things. One thing that got missed, I got a very nice letter from the Chaska Hawks baseball team thanking us for the use of athletic field and Sunset Field for the baseball season. He just talks about the partnership with the city and that Chaska High School is great. Playing on these fields is a privilege to our players and is a real tribute to the community feel we have in Chaska. We are proud to be Chaska Hawks and proud to be part of the pride of Chaska. So I just wanted to share that, and that's from Coach Ballman and Coach Gerber. So I did not share that when I got it, so I wanted to make sure I did that. On a sad note, Pete Brewers, who was an assistant chief for Chaska Fire for a number of years, just recently passed away. His wife Shirley was our city clerk for 30-plus years. So they have real big ties to the community. He was actually revived by our fire department a few years back, so they really got a lot of good bonus time to spend with Pete after that happened. So that was so that happened, and his funeral will be this Thursday. So you'll probably see a lot of fire trucks around town. It's at Guardian Angels. A lot of people in black uniforms. So Pete was a great guy and a great storyteller. I can tell stories about him though. So, but anyways, this tomorrow, Congressman Phillips is in town, and he's doing a number of different things. But one of the things he's doing a Vietnam Veterans pinning ceremony at Veterans Park. I'm not really positive what it is, Chief. I don't know if you guys are aware of it. That
I don't think it's
maybe
tomorrow. Let me check real quick.
Or wait, you know. No,
I think
not
it's on the
tomorrow.
15th.
It's the 15th, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, it's the
yeah.
15th, I got other things tomorrow. It's the 15th, and it's from 10:45 to 12 o'clock. I'm not, I know nothing more than this. I asked them if our local event, our veterans know, but I never got a response back, so. But I assume that it's open to the public if the congressman is doing it, so.
We'll find out more information, get it
Yeah,
out to you
if
guys.
I can get more, I will get it out. And then he's also gonna be working at the Habitat for Humanity House that's up on Crest Drive. So we're gonna be, he's gonna be there. And then he does these little pop-ins where he goes and works somewhere, and I know he's still looking for somewhere to pop into and
Trying to convince Mark.
to do that. So that's the 15th. River City Days, I know a bunch of people talked about, but Billy Undesser is the new chairperson. She took a lot on and really did a good, I mean, she's got some core people that have helped her, like Don and Cindy Hall have been there forever. And Tim Siebenauer was there constantly helping her out. So I think that for her first time through that, you know, I'm sure there were things that got missed or stopped or different, but I think she did a tremendous job. I agree. I hung around till the bands were playing in the evening. Saturday night was the Good for Gary, brought a ton of people from outside of the community that actually looked forward to that. And boy, I tell you what, we couldn't have had better weather. There wasn't a bug in sight. I never got bit once, and it just, and usually they take that last break right around 11 o'clock, and generally the park empties. I was leaving and I heard them start up, and I looked back and that they filled that tent right back up. So they had a really good crowd to the end. So that was pretty awesome. So I just wanted to make sure that she got her recognition for all the work that she did, and she was there all day long. I saw her somewhere. So congratulations and good job. Chaska Cubs baseball team start playoffs Sunday night. They won. They beat Prior Lake. Now they play Tuesday. I have no idea who they're playing. Tuesday is unfortunate for us because it's National Night Out. So
And they're actually playing here.
and they have home field advantage until they're out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they were number 1 seed, and so
They just have to win again.
they just have to keep winning. But it is, I think it might be double limb. I'm not sure of it.
It is, yeah, they would, if they would have
It is
lost on
double limb.
Sunday, it would have bounced.
Oh, that's
down.
right, they would have had it, yep.
Yep.
They would have played Wednesday instead of that. Also, I want to mention filings opening up Tuesday. The mayor's position is open. Ward, help me guys, Ward.
One.
3 and 1.
Wards 1 and 3 are open, so filings are open. You have to see our city clerk, Denise, and if you are filing, I would schedule a time. Also, we're meeting again, our next meeting date is the 15th, and then the 29th is the 5th Monday. Are we having a work session? Yes, we have a work session. Not sure at this point if we'll have a council meeting. Sometimes if we have something that needs approval, as long as we're together, we would have a quick council meeting. And then Labor Day happens to be the first Monday of the month, so that's September 5th, so which then pushes us to double meetings again, back-to-back meetings on the 12th and the 19th. So, and we will begin our establishing a preliminary tax levy. When do we have to set that?
The 19th.
The 19th. So the 19th, we actually set our
Of September.
preliminary, which
Not
is,
August.
what's that?
Of September,
Yes,
yeah.
the 19th of September. And that's where we set our preliminary. We cannot go higher than that. We can lower it from that. So we kind of make sure we get everything there, and then we'll see what happens. My screen on my computer just switched over, and it says heat wave. Must have got really hot out there since we've been sitting here. It's just funny, it just went from, huh?
Cubs play Egan.
Egan. Oh, yeah, that's right, I did hear that. Yeah, I think that's it. All right, so if you were listening, when we started, we were in a closed session for our city administrator's performance review. So we are going to go back into that closed session. So I would need a motion. Yeah, you can do that once we close. I think it's better. Yeah. We'll be good. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we go back into a closed session.
So moved.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Hubbard, second by Councilmember Wong, that we go into the closed session. At this point, we are closed, right?
You have to take
on
a
it.
vote.
Oh, sorry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we're in closed session. All right.
Now you
And,
gotta-
yes.